Hello, everybody. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. My name is Dax Meredith. I've always had a strong interest in software development and information technology. I also have a large background in customer service, and I'm a very fast learner. I am currently attending the Savvy Coders Full Stack Web Development Program, and my capstone project is a site that I made to be used for my band. We're going to start off by talking about Agile. That was the first thing we learned in this cohort. Agile was essentially a way for us to structure how our days would go and how our workflow would be. During this time, we did daily stand-ups before every class, 15-minute meetings where we would talk about how things were going and if there was anything holding us back and if there was anything we could do to remedy that. During these meetings, I acted as Scrum Master for 3 out of the 6 weeks that we ran these 3 out of the 6 sprints that we did. Those sprints were 2 weeks long each over the course of 12 weeks. So moving on from that, we're going to go take a look at my wireframes for my project. So here we have my homepage wireframe. It looks pretty similar to the final product. I ended up scrapping what I put here, this action shot in the background. I ended up wanting to keep it very simple and aesthetically clean because I did a lot of research on what other bands did, and it was all very simple and easy to navigate and not very busy looking. There wasn't a whole lot of things all over the place to look at to draw your eye away from like the main focus of the page. If we take a look at some other pages here, this event page, for example, I originally had the idea to move the logo to the top left. I ended up scrapping that idea and just keeping it uniform across all the pages with the header at the top and the nav bar in the middle. And it's the same thing with all of these. I just ended up keeping it all uniform across the whole thing. So now I'm going to switch over to that web page and show you what I'm talking about. So this is my web page. This is the home screen. As you can see, it's a little bit different from the wireframes. I did stick with that video in the middle, and I have the logo at the top with the nav bar underneath. This YouTube video is just a link to YouTube. It's not an API or anything special. But down here at the bottom is this box. This is a Spotify API that I'm using to bring in different podcast episodes. So I can switch between a couple different ones here, and they will all play. Unfortunately, I can't play you the audio because of how Zoom does screen sharing, but I can demonstrate that they do in fact play. As you can see, the bar at the bottom is progressing. And same thing with this YouTube video, this plays as well. Moving on to my events page. This page just displays any upcoming events we have. But the fun thing and interesting thing about this page is that it's actually using an API that I built to pull this data from a database. And that database is MongoDB. And the API that I'm using, like I said, I built myself, is essentially just sending that data to Mongo and then pulling it back when it needs it. We tested our APIs using Insomnia, and I can actually pull up the code for this here. This is the schema for that data, which is essentially just the structure that that data needs to be in order for it to be accepted by the API. And then here we have the main file. I'm sorry, that's totally the wrong thing. We have the main file for that API. This is just handling all of the things that can do. It's posting it to the API, it's getting that data, and you can delete that data if you need to. Switching back over to the page here, moving on to the merch tab. This tab is just a display currently. It doesn't have any actual purchasing functionality. That is something I'd like to add in the future, but it's a bit difficult with processing user data in a secure way, especially payments. Moving on to contact here. This is just a contact form through FormSpree, so you can just put your name in and your email, and you can just fill it out with anything you'd like. Say hello, and then select your reason for contact and hit the send button. And then it just tells you, thanks, your form was submitted. You hit go back, takes you right back to the page. And from here, what I could do is I could go to my email and I could view whatever that person said, whatever they wanted to tell me, and I could respond accordingly. Moving on to this final tab here, the About Us page. It's just a short blurb about, the band itself and these pictures of all of us down here. And while this might seem a little bit simple at first glance, it's actually a little trickier than it seems. These pictures will adjust to whatever size your screen is so that everything stays in frame. This was very difficult to do. I'm actually quite proud of this. And the last little touch is that hitting the logo at the top here takes you back to the home page. So from here, I'm going to move on to my code itself. This is the index.js file here. Just going to go over it really quickly. This render function is essentially just rendering the page itself. This after render function is happening after the page renders so that nothing breaks. This router.hooks function here is pulling all the data from the different APIs. So this first one is pulling data from the API that I had for the events page. And then this right here is pulling data from Spotify for the podcast episodes. That is pretty much all for the actual project itself. Finishing up, I'd just like to talk quickly about GitHub. We used Git and GitHub to for version control and essentially make sure that we were pushing everything up making sure it was working before we pushed it up. We were able to work locally and break things and make sure that they were working before we pushed up those live changes. And that comes to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time to view this presentation. And if you'd like to reach out to me, please feel free. Thanks.